The nation's arrival at the Otto Ranch brings with it a host of issues, including suspicion, conflict, and a sudden and unexpected water shortage, which I'm assuming will be the cause of conflict for the remainder of this season. 'Cause you just can't get a break in the apocalypse, not even for a day. It's the mid-season premiere of Fear the Walking Dead, Season 3, Episode 9 and 10, Minotaur and the Diviner. Hey everyone, D here, and welcome to this week's review, the return of Fear the Walking Dead. So, as usual, there will be spoilers ahead. Now, before we get started with everyone, I just want to say thank you to all of you. This right now is kind of the third season beginning of D's Reviews. We started 2 years ago with the series premiere of Fear the Walking Dead. They're kind of halfway through the third season now. It's fall, so kind of feels like new beginnings. So just want to take a moment and say thank you guys so much for watching the reviews and all of your feedback. Really means a lot to me. So let's dive right into it. All right, so we are back at the ranch. We have the One Nation arriving, and we have, like I said, that host of conflicts going on. And, you know, I have, like I said, this is the first show that I started with, so I do have a certain love. There is a certain place in my heart for Fear the Walking Dead. But one of the issues that I seem to continually run into with this show is they seem to always kind of rush everything. They seem to want to get to all of these points and they push. They don't take their time getting through it. I thought a lot of stuff this episode probably should have been stretched out, or these first two episodes should have been sort of stretched out. And I think part of it is also because they're squeezing these 8 episodes into 6 weeks. We started with 2 tonight, then we're going to have 4 regular episodes, and then 2 more episodes back to back for the season finale. It feels fast. So that might be part of what contributes to it. But a lot of these conflicts, a lot of everything that's sort of developed, while at the core, I understand where they're coming from, everything seemed to be so rushed. I mean, we even starting out in the opening scenes, seeing the suspicions of the water table. You know, we got Alicia getting a little less water, and then we've got Maddie looking through these past few records where suddenly over the past couple of years, remember it is 2010 in the apocalypse, way back when all of this started. So the 2007, 2010, looking and see where the waters are going, and that's dropping. So we're seeing already setting up what the conflict for this second half of this season is going to be. Not to mention, of course, on top of the issues with these two groups that have been kind of warring, now coming into each other. And it does make sense why we're going to have a lot of these issues. I love that opening bit. I love Jake's speech when everyone got together to kind of talk about, we got to put these things behind us. We got to move forward from a leadership position. That was really strong, and that's what I like about kind of Jake stepping into it. But Jake doesn't really do much throughout these couple episodes. He sort of pops up here and there, but he kind of abdicates a lot of the responsibility to Maddie, which we're seeing as kind of like the secret power, the secret ruler behind. I mean, even Walker, everyone is kind of always checking with her and negotiating with that. She seems to be the position, the decider, if you will, on the Otto Ranch. And to begin with, let's start off with the immediate conflict that starts, of course, the shooting. Who, of course, gets riled up because little kid Mrs. Gretchen. Gretchen, of course, killed by Troy. So even while we see... Now, Troy's not going to mention to the militia what we happen. And we do have, again, a lot of these secrets that are constantly being held and sort of not all released, but they get built upon. And each of these secrets creates these problems. We, of course, have Troy's the one that actually killed Gretchen and the family. And then, so now we've got the kid that's upset and is going to attack Walker's people because of this. And Troy sees it but does nothing to dissuade because, of course, he isn't happy with them. So we've got all these suspicions immediately colliding where the kid, I don't know where he got the gun since they made a strong statement that all of the guns are kept track of, even to the bullet. They did that in the previous scene when we had the whole key separation. We'll both have these keys in order to get. So that happens. Don't know where the kid gets the gun. But then they try to kill the kid, and ends up getting his throat crushed and all of that. And that just sort of precipitates. I don't think the nation's victim was killed. They didn't seem to imply that he was just shot. So how this constantly cascades, and the very fact that immediately they'd had, in the very beginning we had Jake getting the keys and separating up, so we'll both have this. And then he immediately abdicates that. As soon as Walker gets upset, he immediately abdicates the guns, turning over all of the weapons to all of these Southern independent preppers. They're now asking to give up all of their guns. Jake should have known that never would have flown. Maddie, I don't know why she pushed and agreed to do all. I mean, it's one of those moves where we do this in order to create the conflict. So we can get the conflict in order to get everything to fight. We have Troy's whole suicide mission in the cabin, which made very little sense. I mean, in the sense of, why are you pushing this so much? Knowing you're against preppers, knowing you're going against the Otto family, you just moved in, and we're automatically taking guns, we're automatically doing an us versus them. If they had taken their time and gone, okay, a week has passed, 2 weeks had passed, certain amount of time's gone on, seen little bits of issues and problems, and that potentially leading up to this conflict, that might have made more sense. But they basically do it the next day. And of course Troy's not going to back down. I love the fact that he's got guns all over his place. You knew that he would. All over that building. Then we've got Nick trying to save him, and then everyone else getting mad at Nick. Then we get Nick, and all of that was meant just so Nick can finally give that cathartic release that he was the one that killed Otto, that killed Jeremiah. And that somehow stops Troy, but only for a moment, because right after they capture him to send it out, then he has that whole long final conflict and strange head-to-head with Maddie at the very end of Minotaur. So all of this is happening really fast. And I think if they had taken a lot more time to build this up, to give a justification for it, it wouldn't have felt so rushed. And maybe a little bit, like I said, more justified. Now, when Troy did stop his whole assault there, I was trying to figure out why he would suddenly pause for it. Now, they do intimate that Troy's very upset at Jeremiah, very upset at his dad for dying, for killing himself and leaving them all of these problems. So when Nick confesses to him, because Nick's pushing the whole time as he died in order for this to happen. So Troy is able to give up responsibility for making it happen, because that was a sacrifice that his father did. And now he has to pay for all of those complications. And therefore, if he screws it all up, no big deal. And yet, so I think this is what they were going for at least, that when Nick confesses to him that he killed Jeremiah didn't kill himself, in order to create the peace, because Jeremiah was going to let everyone else die for his own pride. Now, my thoughts at that moment was that Troy was seeing that going, okay, maybe now I am doing that same thing. Maybe I'm abdicating that responsibility, and therefore, if I stop, I have to own up for it. And so it seems, and that would make sense, especially with the following scene that he has with Jake, who of course suddenly shows up again. Where he was during that entire gunfight, I don't know. Again, he was gone. He suddenly shows up to have a little chat with his brother before sending him out on exile. But Troy seemed to understand that. He seems to accept his fate in that sense. I was laughing when they were going to exile him, because remember, Troy grew up everywhere on the farm. He even says to Jake there that they're going to send him out to the Badlands, and Troy's response was, like, that's a bad thing? Implying, of course, that he has spent a lot of his life out there. And so when they put the hood on him to send him out, all I'm thinking is, why are you doing that? The idea is to drop him out in the middle of nowhere. He knows the whole land. So that's silly. So all this seems to be an abdication, an understanding of responsibility that Troy's taking on. which is why that whole conflict with Maddie seems strange. By the way, never let someone get that close to you when you have the gun. They're always going to reach out and try and grab it. Actually, a person can run 21 feet in about 3 seconds, which is usually faster than you can draw and fire. So if you have the gun out, if they're any closer than 10 feet, don't let it happen. Just a piece of advice for you in the future zombie apocalypse. But that created, that's why that situation was so weird between Troy, because all of a sudden, again, he is angry, then he abdicates, then he's taking responsibility for the group to go on, and then he is lashing back out at Maddie. Now, it's understandable. I think he sees that Maddie is a complete manipulator and will lie, cheat, and steal in order to protect her kids and do whatever it is that she feels is right. I think that's what Troy was seeing in that moment. But regardless, the fact that they let him out, of course he's going to survive. He knows the land well. So this is not the last that we've seen of Troy, certainly not Nick and hallucinations, but we will see Troy again, mark my words. All right, so the other big thing, of course, we're dealing with this week is the big water crisis, which pops out of nowhere. Wasn't Alicia swimming in the giant holes? It looked like a whole lake or river there, and now it seems to be drowned anywhere. That's more than just a slight drain, because that's only a period of, what, like a week? Maybe a little bit more. It's hard to remember how fast time's all moving in this. But she did that big swimming, baptismal scene earlier on in the season in a giant swimming hole. Now seeing the water dropping so much, that's what I'm talking about manufacturing. That seemed to be happening before the nation. If the nation showed up and you had all these people together and they were all using the water and then it seemed to have gotten tapped more and more, that would have made more sense. But you would have needed to taken more time for it. But this, of course, creates all of our secondary conflicts. First of all, we have, as immediately this happened, the two big leaders, Maddie and Walker, leave. Leave Ophelia and Nick and Alicia basically in charge. Ophelia seems to be running the nation over there. So they leave, and of course take a radio. When was the last time you saw a radio here? I always thought the radio stuff didn't work because of the canyons, or there were some issues, because they never used radios. And now all of a sudden they've got a radio up and they can talk for like miles and miles all the way halfway down to Mexico. Just kind of annoyed me there. But we see where that's going to proceed in complications, because of course the first thing that Maddie does when she gets finally down to the swap meet is give up the radio. I don't know what else they were planning to trade with. Was it just the coins? Silver, I'm assuming? I guess they're assuming this has still value. That's preppers. But they didn't have anything else. The fact that that's the first thing that she gives up, that's going to create more complications because we have that lack of communication, especially since she's going to be heading out and heading down to the dam eventually. So we see the beginnings of these conflicts set up. And of course we have water rationing. The guns are already apart. Then we have suspicions that people are double dipping. I think that was an appropriate line that was thrown out, harsh as it was, is that we all look the same. Unfortunately, that could be exactly what was going on there. They had no proof. They had no showing that this particular person went through, and there was no reason necessarily for Ophelia to treat people over, but there's that suspicion, and there was nothing ever done to really allay this suspicion. I think that's part of it. They take two conflicting parties and throw them together, and they really don't do a lot of work to try and get things to work through. They immediately separate into two camps. And that's really what precipitated all of the conflict in this. And again, Jake, really nowhere to be seen. Does have that nice scene with the people that are all very upset at him because there's water restrictions. I'm sorry that you're bigger and you need more water and that you have cows. Water restrictions are water restrictions. Alicia was great. I loved her little speech. I loved her support of that and a great point. These things are going to happen anyway. If you don't like it, you can leave. But there's no justification for getting all this extra stuff just because you need it. That's what restrictions are for. But again, we don't really see anything else of Jake throughout this episode. It's like, that was it. And then after that, it's Alicia that's dealing with everything. Or it's Nick dealing with the remains of the militia that, of course, are now all looking at him because he survived the big stand at the Otto cabin that took out Troy. So now we have, of course, Nick keeping that secret of what actually happened there for some understandable reasons, but we see how that constantly precipitates. Even the idea of going to get the guns to cause the peace, the first response he hears off the guys are, or to cause a whole lot of bloodshed. So nobody is willing to try and work things out. And I guess that just becomes sort of the frustrating stuff. There is enough complications out there without people honestly working hard to come together. And the whole final scene where we have Alicia seeing the person with the divining rods dousing for water, finding a spot, she is looking for a solution. And I think at the end, that's what Nick's final movement is. They're creeping up very obviously in the middle of the daytime to the cabin at the top of the hill. Nobody sees him. That's why Nick does the final move, because I think he sees where the militia group wants to go, and at least Alicia here is trying to do something to bring them together. So she sees that, he hands the gun off, abdicating his responsibility to go down and help Alicia, and that inspires everyone else to come together. So at least we should have a moment of togetherness for the group. But it seemed like that was a lot of manufactured instances in order to get to that revelation idea. It's like as soon as there's a warrior conflict, everybody panics. And we should be past that at this point. We should be past a lot of these issues that we keep running into. Even there's a certain scene where Alicia and Nick is talking to Nick. And Alicia recognizes the point that it was Maddie or Nick that killed Jeremiah. She knew it as soon as Maddie had said that he committed suicide. You know, she's smart. I like that. But even her conflict with Nick right there about trying to be nice to Maddie, trying to make these sacrifices, trying to be the favorite son, that they're past that. I thought that they've already gone past that. They have had so many moves back and forth. They keep returning to these old conflicts. And I believe they'd gotten past this when we had seen the insight into Maddie's history about why she does what she does, the fact that she had to kill her own dad, and that was part of her earlier darkness. I thought they were past some of these petty, let's find for mom's approval moments. But I guess not. All right, things are going along. Let me try and move quickly through this. Great seeing Strand. Loved him coming back. And of course, we are seeing the connections when we'll finally hit back up with Daniel, who we'll talk about in just a minute. Though that was another one of those things, I thought that whole swap meet could have taken like a whole episode of meeting and intricacies and finding stuff up. Because as soon as Walker goes to make the deal for the water, my first thought is she's going to rip him off. There's no reason to be any truth. She's going to go and steal his stuff. So at the end, when he comes out without any of the coins, I thought they had just broken into the truck and just taken his stuff. I mean, that's what I would have done. Ends up being, of course, Maddie have done that in order to pay Strand's debt to get them out. But again, lack of communication there, that shouldn't have been a surprise, because without the money, I don't know, those people might have been upset that they had caused him to get all this water together and not intending to pay him, and so they might have just beaten him up or killed him and taken his truck. It is the apocalypse, right? But that's sort of the feeling that we got out of this swap meet, is this very dark black market, everything's possible. I love the guy getting the tattoos on his eyelids, so he looks like he's always awake. Smart. But I thought that was a whole thing. There could have been some real interesting stories told there sometime. Even Strand's whole punishment. They bring it up like we've got to see that scene when they come in, like, okay, he's going to be tied to the front and he's got to keep the walkers out. But it's daytime when Maddie says goodbye to him when he's tied up. They take him out at night. And then we just see walkers coming, but we don't see anything until the following day where he's fighting things off, and then the guards come out and save him because Maddie pays his debt. I would have loved to have seen Strand out there learning to really fight. I mean, that would have been a perfect kind of training bit to have as he's out there fighting things off, and then maybe sometime later, boom, and then at the end, you know, where he's half and he's exhausted and he's still pushing off, and maybe he's doing some new moves and pushing things against. I mean, showing an evolution of fighting, of zombie fighting for Strand. I thought there was a great opportunity there that, again, was just rushed. so we could get to this thing. And of course, this, we know as soon as we find Strand, that's going to lead up to the dam, and that's why things are going to work. I mean, once we see Strand, we get that connection to the dam, and we see where it's going to meet back up with Daniel and bring all these disparate pieces back together. I'm fine with that. That's cool. Strand seems like somebody that would have gotten in trouble inside of a swap meet like this. So I totally buy that. But it's very, I don't know, it's overly rushed. You should have just taken a little bit of time in order to do these things. But like I said, they always seem to want to get from A to B as fast as possible without doing a lot of logic to get there or missing a lot of opportunities that are readily presented. And as for Daniel, okay, he's still working with Lola. They're handing out water. That is great. Why people got upset at them for stealing the water from the dam? They were giving the water away. They were rationing it, but they only had so much in the truck. So I don't understand. I mean, it's like about pissing where you drink, effectively. I mean, I love the fact that we do have, we took that moment for Daniel where he is always scanning the crowd for Ophelia. He's a dad, I get that, and Lola caught that, and she did have a point about hope and looking and what it can do to your heart. That's fine, those are all good points. But that whole attack there, to me, just didn't really make sense. You almost wanted somebody to shout out like, "We're giving you this water. We're not making you pay for it. We're just rationing it out." Anyway, again, it just seemed I didn't get why there was even a conflict there. Yes, you have people panicking when they want more water, when they want more resources. But you're also assuming everybody is selfish. And I found in large crowd survival situations like this, there's a lot more. I mean, we see it right now in the United States with everything going on with Harvey and with Irma and with the fires up north. I mean, we're going through a lot of stuff. And please, donate to the Red Cross if you can. They do great work and people need the help. But what we see right here always is people coming together in crises. So this type of conflict doesn't always make sense, and especially right there where it was being given away, I didn't get it. But, point being, good to see that we have Daniel there. That's where we're going to have the meetup, so, good. All of these desperate elements are coming together, if a little rushed and sometimes contrived. Just a couple of small things. The opening scene. Were they using the dogs to herd the walkers to them? That's brilliant. Never seen anything like that before. Was really excited. I loved Troy's line to Maddie, calling her the White Witch of the Apocalypse. Gotta do what she says, right? I think it was perfect. 'Cause again, seeing through Maddie's eyes and how Maddie is basically going to make choices, whatever is important to her, which is something, of course, that Walker runs into when he sees all of the silver gold gone in order just to get Strand. Maddie's idea of this is serving the long term, we're going to get constant access to water as opposed to one singular deal. Yeah, that's smart, but probably should have given Walker a heads up. I mean, could have, right? At least before the meet. Oh, and speaking of Strand, that moment between him and Maddie, where Maddie mentions that her children are alive, and thus implying that Travis is gone, and Strand picking up on that, I just thought that was cute. Something of power. Less said is more, and it worked really well because of how these two characters work together. So that was really nice. All right, so I think that pretty much covers everything. I mean, it was 2 episodes. I could talk for another 20 minutes about all sorts of specifics, but we're really dealing with our primary conflicts. We got the two groups coming together, trying to mesh. They, of course, have no waters, and you've got the whole gun issue. Though, again, if that really is the case, why in that final dividing scene, when they left the cabin there full of guns, he just left the door open and the gun leaning, like, obviously right there in the doorway? That seemed to be abdicating a bit too quickly. But this is going to be the source of conflict. Now, hopefully, digging for the new well together might pull some people together. But my assumption is these problems are only going to precipitate whatever water issues that Maddie's going to get is not really going to solve the problems because things are going to fall apart at the dam. My guess is by the end of this season, they're leaving the ranch. It just really feels like they're moving that way. We even have the line that Maddie says to Alicia is, things change, you got to be ready to go. Here's radio. I'm going to sell mine in 12 hours, but good luck to you. So I'm hoping they take time. I'm hoping they tell some stories. I'm hoping they don't overly rush things. I don't want to just critique the show. I love the show. It has so much potential. I just don't like to see that potential wasted because they're trying to get to points too quickly. Take your time. We will go with the ride. Make it worthwhile. All right, so if you did enjoy this review, please go ahead and hit that like button. Thoughts, ideas, comments, throw those down in the section below. You can always catch me on Twitter and Instagram. I am at Darren Jakes. Please be a subscriber. Don't miss the rest of the reviews for this show, plus all the other shows we got coming up this fall, Inhumans, Dirk Gently's, Mr. Robot, The Walking Dead, and of course the return of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in November. So lots of fun stuff. You won't miss it if you're a subscriber. Do it by hitting my face right there. And I will throw up a random review right up here for you to check out. Oh, it's a good one. Don't miss it. All right, so that's it for me. I'm D, and I'm out of here. Catch you guys next time. Bye-bye.